In 2000, Disney released Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, a spin-off of Pixar's mega-successful Toy Story franchise. It only lasted 65 episodes before getting cancelled during its second season. It's still relatively obscure, Disney never released it on DVD, but it was fairly popular and retains a loyal fanbase to this day. It's not exactly a cult phenomenon like Invader Zim, but its fans are pretty passionate about it. When I started this channel, I really wanted to talk about media that I love, and this is a show I really, really love. I've spoken about it a little bit before in some of my more personal videos, and it's true that this show has a special place in my heart because I made some very big life decisions because of the people that I met in this fandom. And it's possible that if I had never watched the show, my life would look very different right now. Not to be too dramatic about it, but it's true. But even aside from those personal connections, I just think this is a really solid, good, fun show. And I'm gonna do my best to explain why in this summer series. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command was originally part of Disney's One Saturday Morning cartoon block. The Disney Channel aired reruns from 2006 to 2008, the last time the show was ever been on the air. It was produced by Tad Stones, the creator of Darkwing Duck, and featured the voice talents of Patrick Warburton, Nicole Sullivan, Wayne Knight, just to name a few. The show was a defictionalization of the unseen cartoon Buzz Lightyear was hinted to come from in the first Toy Story. When the series was first pitched, Pixar was just getting ready to release Toy Story 2, so the series' release date was pushed back. This also meant that the movie pilot, The Adventure Begins, was written and animated after most of the show had already been, which explains why it looks so good. Though BLOSC is meant to be the show that Andy's Buzz in Toy Story was based on, it's not a show within a show. There's a brief bit of Andy's toys getting ready to watch the pilot movie in the DVD, and the series opening featured a CG sequence of the toys sitting down to watch the show, both animated by Pixar. But other than that, it's a standalone creation. It's meant to be what the show might have looked like. John Lasseter was apparently not a big fan, which is at least understandable. Toy Story was his baby, although funny enough, one of the show's characters was featured in one of Boom Studios' Toy Story comics as, get this, a toy who doesn't realize he's a toy. Lasseter was apparently not happy about that either. The character was never featured in any of the following comics, and of course he wasn't in the Toy Story movies, so continuity? The show also got a video game, though it wasn't very well received. And it did win a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Sound Editing. But like I said, aside from the pilot movie, the series was never released on DVD. It doesn't have that much merchandise. There was McDonald's toy line from several years ago, and I think some coloring books, but that's about it. If it was never popular enough to be released, why does it have such a devoted fan base, and why do I love it so much? Well, it's simple. The show was just really well written. Buzz is your typical action superhero, a bastion of justice and the greatest space ranger who ever lived. But as a character, he at least understood the value of bending the rules if the reason was good enough, and he had enough awkward charm to keep him from being unrelatable.
I've never been on one of these computer-chosen dates before.
I've been on hundreds.
Zurg, meanwhile, is hammy as all get out. He's ridiculously over the top, and yet he's not cartoonishly incompetent. I think he's one of the most hilarious cartoon villains I've ever seen that still managed to be genuinely threatening at times.
I'm going to take the galaxy's greatest hero and turn him into me.
But just those two characters alone couldn't carry a show, and the writers did a great job of populating the world with interesting side characters. Buzz's team is made up of the cool action Princess Mira, gentle giant Booster, and snarky, ridiculously human robot XR. They bounced off each other really well, and their widely different personalities made for a really fun team dynamic. There's the gruff but fatherly commander, and the three-eyed aliens from the Toy Story films are the scientists and engineers of Star Command, even though the aliens in the Toy Story films had nothing to do with Buzz Lightyear. I try not to think about it too hard. And then there's the villains. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command had a great rogues gallery. a wide range of villains from the comedically brutish to the sophisticated and fearsome. Most of the recurring villains were either created by or associated with Zurg to some form, but they all had distinct personalities and a wide variety of motivations. Some even managed to come across as sympathetic. The energy vampire Nosferatu became exceptionally popular with fans. Is it just because he's a vampire? Possibly. Although, to be fair, the idea of a vampire who feeds on machines instead of people is admittedly pretty cool.
I never drink blood.
They even worked in a robotic werewolf. Now that's awesome. And that's another thing that made the show so enjoyable. The sci-fi is just a lot of fun. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command was basically an homage to all kinds of science fiction adventures, taking cues from Battlestar Galactica, Babylon 5, Flash Gordon, and so on. Jonathan Harris and Bill Mumy from Lost in Space both voiced characters. Whole episodes were inspired by stories from Star Trek. And though it was never officially stated, I refuse to believe that Buzz having ship number 42 is not a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One episode spoofed the Roswell incident right down to the weather balloon, and Buzz's home on Capitol Planet is based on Disneyland's Monsanto House of the Future. There wasn't really an overarching story, it was mostly just episodic adventures of Buzz and his team fighting bad guys on various planets. For the most part, you could watch the show in any order and be okay. Although every major villain does get an introductory episode, and certain episodes only make sense if you watch them in a certain order. In addition, several characters do have arcs, changes in their attitudes and behaviors that point to a personal growth over time. It's a shame the show ended when it did, because the character writing was really very strong, and it would have been great to see what else the writers could have done with it. And while the stories featured in each episode were a lot of fun, the lack of a real overarching plot really makes the strength of the character writing stand out even more. In the next part, we'll take a closer look at these characters, and talk about just what made them so special.